Okay, this is the starting video for chapter 5. I'm going to try to do 8.1 through 8.5. I have all this on the same worksheet, so I'm just going to zip through the problems really quick. Super basic. In Hawks, you can select low, medium, or high. And on this particular chapter, I have selected the low just because we're trying to kind of highlight the basics of this chapter. So let's get started. Plot the set. Okay, so -5. What they want you to do is plot that point. -4 is here, 0, and +5. One thing we're practicing here, let me change my pen color, is that positives are to the right of 0 and negatives are to the left. So that's pretty basic. Let's move on to number 2. Less than, greater than, or equal to. Okay, the first one is less. It points to the left. The second one is greater. It points to the right. And the last one is equal to. So -4 and -2.1. Okay, negative means that you owe. Okay, negative means that you owe $4 in that situation, and over here you would owe $2.10. Well, $2.10 is actually greater than 4. The bigger mouth of the inequality opens up towards the bigger number. Now, if you look at it up here, -2.1 would be about right there, where that tiny blue dot is. -4 is down here. So you can see that -2.1 is closer to 0 than -4. Now, as I said, would you rather owe someone $4 or would you rather owe someone $2.10? So the answer to this one is B. It is less than. 5.7 versus. Okay, so this is the first chapter that we've dealt with negative numbers. You need to know that a negative times a negative equals a positive. Let me write that down. When you multiply a negative times a negative, the answer becomes a positive. So negative times a negative actually makes this positive 5.7. And so when we compare them, 5.7 to the left is equal to 5.7 on the right. So the answer is A. Number 4. Again, think about this in terms of money. Negative mean you owe. So we owe -$5.9 here, and we owe -$3.1. Would you rather owe someone $5.90, or would you rather owe someone $3.10? Well, I'd rather owe $3.10. So this is the bigger number, and so the bigger mouth needs to open up towards the bigger number. This is the smaller number, and so this is true. This is a positive number. This is a negative number. Will a positive ever be less than a negative? No, that is not true. This is false. 1.8 is greater than or equal to -9.7. You're always better to be positive than negative. I'm going to skip 6 because I think it's self-explanatory. I'm also going to skip 7. Think about this in terms of money. Would you rather have 0.90 cents or would you rather have $2.30? A lot of times it's helpful to think of these abstract numbers in terms of money. Number 8, you just plot those points. Number 9, we've practiced that. 7 is greater than -3. This is a positive number. This is a negative, and positives are always bigger than negatives. 0 and 7. 0 is less than 7. All right, the next topic is absolute value. Absolute value is the distance a number is from 0. Now, this is my symbol for absolute value. You put vertical bars, okay? It's not parentheses, it's vertical bars. Is the distance a number is from 0. So you have to think about the number line and how many spaces. Okay, so think about this. Here's 0 right here. Okay, -38 would be way down here. -38 would be to the left of 0. But the absolute value is asking you the distance from 0, not the direction. Negative is the direction, it's to the left. But hold on just one second. Let me pause this video. Okay, I'm sorry. So this is 38. Sorry, that's a 38. 38 units from, I'm losing my mind. 38 units, it should say units, 38 units from 0. So what these vertical bars do is they tell you the distance that number is from 0, which would be 38. Now, the absolute value always ends with a positive. The absolute value always ends with a positive, okay? Let's move on. Absolute value is something that people don't have a ton of experience with, so let's try some more. Okay, 28. So you think about the number line. Here's 0, and 28 would be way over here. So this is 0, and this is 28. The question is, how many steps would you take to get from 0 to 28? Well, the answer is 28. It's a distance of 28 from 0. Now, this one's interesting. The negative is in front. So what you're going to do is you're going to calculate the distance from 0 to 31. Okay, we know that that would be 31 steps. So the absolute value of 31 is just a plain 31. But this negative was in front. So our answer has a negative in front, and then the absolute value is 31. Okay, I said this earlier, but let's look at this again. A negative times a negative equals a positive. So if you are multiplying, a negative times a negative gives you a positive. So a negative times a negative gives you a positive 25. Back to absolute value. Notice that this negative is in front. So that's going to remain in front. What we want to do is we want to take the absolute value of negative 13. Well, think about this way. There's negative 13 down here. Here's 0. How many steps would be between 13 and 0? You don't worry about if it's positive or negative. The distance from 0 is 13. But we had a negative in front. So the answer is negative in front. Absolute value would be 13. Okay, next we're moving to the addition and subtraction of integers. Okay, so what you do here, and I don't want to write this down because everyone explains this a little bit differently, but what I typically tell my students is if one is positive and one is negative, you're going to find the difference. Okay, so the difference here between 14 and 12 is 2. And then you go with the sign of the larger digit. So since 14 is larger and it's positive, the answer is positive 2. Another way to think about this is 14 subtract 12. 14 subtract 12 is 2. Okay, same thing here. This is a positive and this is a negative. So I want to find the difference. What is the difference? There is a negative button on your calculator. I should probably point that out to you because if you're using subtract, it's going to be wrong. Let me cut my calculator. All right, the negative button, let me see, is down here at the bottom. This is your negative button. Do not use subtract. Subtraction is over here. Add, subtract, multiply, divide. That is subtract. This is negative. Okay, that's super duper 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 important. But if I just want to calculate the difference between 15.4 and 6.8, all right, we have a difference of 8.6. And then you go with whichever digit is larger. Since this digit is a negative, our answer would be a negative 8.6. Negative 8.6. Again, there's so many different ways to explain signs with positive and negative integers. I'm not going to attempt to explain it 15 different ways. It's on Hawks. It's something you've had experience with and you have to practice. All right, this is PEMDAS. We add and subtract from left to right. Now make sure that this is the negative button in the calculator. Do not put subtract. Well, okay, so if you want to type it in exactly as it is written, that's what you can do. 7.6 plus, okay, then you have to put a parentheses, and then negative 6.3, close your parentheses, plus, put a parentheses, negative 5.6, close your parentheses, and we get negative 4.3. Okay, we would add and subtract from left to right. We're going to add our numerators, 4 plus 5 plus 7. 4 plus 5 is 9, plus 7 is 16. You keep your denominator the same. That would be 16 over 9. This one, okay, you're going to find the difference. So what's the difference in 2 and 7? Because 2 is positive and 7 is negative. So the difference is 5. and then you take the sign of the larger digit. And since 7 is a larger digit, I take that negative, and the 15 remains the same. I have to reduce that, and the answer is negative 1/3. Let's go to number 22. This is a great word problem. In October, Mr. Marshall opened a checking account and made deposits, okay? If they are deposits, they are positive. So positive 1594, he deposited 1209, he deposited 1519, and he deposited $471. These are all deposits. If you deposit money, it's positive. He wrote checks, okay? So he wrote a check for $994. He wrote a check for $28. He wrote a check for $433, a check for $298, and a check for $81. So we have to get our total that he deposited, and then we have to subtract every check that he wrote. We've done this before. Chapter 8 is just introducing negative numbers to what we've already studied. So that's why this chapter, I'm considering chapter 8 almost to be like a review for us. Let's move on. We add and subtract from left to right. Make sure you do it in the order. Remember PEMDAS, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Multiplication and division are done from left to right. Addition and subtraction, left to right. So negative 6 plus 2, that gives me a negative 4. And then a negative 4 plus a negative 5. A negative plus a negative is just a bigger negative. The answer would be 9. All right, right here we have our trick. A negative times a negative. I've reviewed this in this video twice already. So this is going to turn to a plus 13. The difference is 4 and 13 is positive, so the answer is positive. Okay, what is the additive inverse? Okay, additive inverse. Inverse means opposite. So what they're asking you is what would you add? What is the opposite of negative 100 if you're adding? Well, the opposite of negative 100 is positive 100. Because when we put those two together, we get 0. And so those are additive inverses, additive opposites. Number 27, your bank statement indicates that you are overdrawn by $203. Okay, if you are overdrawn, that means you are in the hole by $203. That is not good. You're in debt. How much must the deposit be to bring the checking account up to $51? So you want to bring this up to a positive $51. Now a number line is helpful here. Let's think about it. You are way down here and you owe negative $203. All right, here's 0 and you want to get yourself to $51. So you want to take the steps to go from negative 203 all the way to 0 plus $51 more. Well, how many steps would that take? Well, 203 plus 51 is $254. You need $254 to meet your goal in the positive direction. 254. So if you add this, you would get 51. Negative, make sure, okay, let's use our negative button. Negative 203 plus 254 is positive 51. Make sure you're not using the subtraction button in place of the negative. At noon, the temperature in Attila, Florida was 24 degrees Fahrenheit. By midnight, it had fallen to 14 degrees. Okay, so think about a little thermometer thing. Okay, this is 24 degrees. It has dropped and it has gone to 14 degrees. What is the change in the temperature? It dropped, okay, so therefore it's going to be a negative by 10 degrees Fahrenheit because the temperature dropped. Moving right along, I've only got a couple more seconds. I want to scan over and see if there's anything that I just feel I absolutely cannot end this video without discussing. Decimals work the same way as integers, work the same way as fractions. We've talked about that. We've talked about multiplication by 0. Okay. Average, let's talk about that really quick. You add these up, 12 plus 2 plus 15 plus 10 plus 6, and then divide by how many numbers you have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Divide by 5. That's how you get the average or the mean. I might make another video